I should have seen the signs. Maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't want to believe that the woman I loved, the woman I built a life with, could be this kind of trash. But standing there, watching another man grope my wife like she was some cheap fling, I realized what a fool I'd been. The gym was nearly empty, dim lighting casting long shadows on the rubber flooring. The air smelled of sweat, metal, and betrayal. And there she was, Lauren, my wife, wearing those tight leggings that I once thought she only wore for me. She wasn't even flinching as this bastard's hand moved down, shamelessly kneading her ass, his voice dripping with sleaze. "Baby, I can show you a few more great exercises. After them, you'll be begging me to do it with you again and again." A sickening wave of rage rolled through me, hot and unstoppable. In half a second, I was next to them. I didn't think. I just acted. My hand locked around his wrist, and with a sharp twist, I snapped his arm like a dry twig. The sound was satisfying, a sick crack followed by his scream, high-pitched and pathetic. He crumpled to the ground, clutching his broken limb, his eyes wide with pain and disbelief. But I wasn't done. I pressed my foot onto his groin, grinding my heel into the most fragile part of his manhood. His face contorted, veins popping in his forehead as he choked on his own breath. "Now let me show you an exercise, one that will ensure you'll never be a real man again." My voice was low, ice cold. I meant every word. Lauren finally reacted, yanking at my arm, shrieking like I was the villain in all of this. "Ethan! Stop it! What the hell are you doing?" I turned to her, my hands trembling, not from fear, not from regret, but from the sheer restraint it took not to lose every ounce of control. "What the hell am I doing?" My voice came out rough, raw. "Are you serious right now, Lauren?" She folded her arms, an ugly sneer twisting her once beautiful face. "You're overreacting. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like." The bastard was still writhing at my feet, moaning like a wounded animal, his broken arm curled against his chest. "Not what it looks like?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. "So what, he tripped and his hand accidentally ended up on your ass? That's the story you're going with?" She scoffed, rolling her eyes like I was some clueless idiot. "Oh my God, Ethan. Grow up. It was just harmless flirting." Harmless flirting. I stared at her, really seeing her for the first time. The woman I married, the woman I had once believed was my partner in everything, was gone. In her place stood a lying, cheating scoundrel who didn't even have the decency to fake regret. "You disgust me," I spat, stepping back. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, with something, fear, maybe? Guilt? No. It was something much worse. Annoyance. Like I was an inconvenience. "You need to calm down," she said, crossing her arms tighter. "You're embarrassing yourself." Oh, I was embarrassing myself? I clenched my fists, my body vibrating with barely contained fury. "Lucky for you," I said, my voice dangerously low, "I'm done wasting my breath on trash." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with her pathetic little boy toy, who was still gasping in pain on the floor. But this wasn't over. Not even close. I stormed out of that gym, my blood boiling, fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. The cold night air hit my face, but it did nothing to cool the inferno raging inside me. My mind was spinning. How long? How many times? How many lies had she looked me dead in the eyes and fed me like I was some dumb, blind idiot? I got into my truck, gripping the steering wheel so tight it felt like I could snap it in half. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, drowning out the noise of the world outside. I could still see them. That bastard's hands on her, his disgusting voice whispering things that made my stomach turn. And her, standing there, letting it happen. The rage was suffocating, but underneath it, something worse was creeping in. A sickening, gut-wrenching ache. The kind that settled deep in your chest and made you feel hollow. I had to know. I had to hear it from her own mouth. I slammed the gas pedal down, speeding toward home, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from breaking apart. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my jaw was clenched so hard my teeth hurt. The house was dark. Of course. She hadn't even bothered to come straight home. I sat there in the truck, staring at the front door, my hands still shaking. Everything we built together, the life we shared, the memories, I could feel them crumbling like ashes slipping through my fingers. And then, headlights. Her car rolled into the driveway like nothing was wrong. She took her sweet time getting out, fixing her hair in the mirror, adjusting her jacket. My stomach turned. She stepped out, saw me, and stopped for a moment. I saw it then, the flicker of hesitation in her eyes. The calculation. She knew. She just didn't care. I pushed open my door, slamming it shut behind me. She sighed, rolling her eyes. Oh great, is this where you start yelling? Because honestly, Ethan, I'm too tired for this crap. I didn't yell. My voice came out low, steady. Too calm. How long, Lauren? She huffed. How long what? Don't. I took a step closer. Don't play dumb with me. How long have you been screwing him? She smirked. Smirked. Like this was a joke to her. Wow. Real mature. The control I was barely hanging onto started slipping. I swear to God, Lauren, if you lie to me one more time. What? You'll do what? She crossed her arms, cocking her head. Hit me? Please. You're not that guy, Ethan. I stepped even closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. No. I won't hit you. But I will make sure you regret every second of what you did to me. She scoffed, pushing past me toward the front door. God, you're so dramatic. I followed her inside, slamming the door behind us. You think this is dramatic? You think finding out my wife has been spreading her legs for some gym rat is dramatic? She threw her purse onto the couch, spinning to face me. Oh, get over yourself. Maybe if you actually paid attention to me instead of working late all the time, I wouldn't have had to look somewhere else. I felt that like a punch to the gut. I took a step back, staring at her. So it's my fault? She shrugged, unbothered. I mean, kind of. Something inside me snapped. The last frayed thread holding me together disintegrated. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You're unbelievable. She flopped onto the couch, kicking off her shoes like this was just another Tuesday night. Look, I don't know what you want from me, Ethan. An apology? Some grand confession? Fine. Yeah, I cheated. Big deal. People do it all the time. Big deal. I took a deep breath, gripping the back of a chair to steady myself. My vision blurred at the edges, dark with fury. Do you even love me? She actually laughed. Love? Oh my God, Ethan, grow up. Love doesn't mean you have to be with one person forever. That's just some fairy tale crap. Everything inside me went cold. I nodded slowly, the weight of reality pressing down on me. Right. Got it. I turned, walked to the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase from the closet, and started throwing my clothes in. Behind me, she sighed dramatically. Oh, what now? You're leaving. Oh, please. Where are you even gonna go? I didn't answer. She leaned against the doorframe, watching me pack. You're really doing this? Just because I had a little fun? I zipped the suitcase shut, turned to her, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing when I looked at her. No love. No longing. Just disgust. You already left, Lauren, I said, my voice hollow. I'm just catching up. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and walked past her without another word. As I stepped outside, the night air hit me again, but this time, it felt different. Lighter. Like I could finally breathe. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I drove without a destination, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The roads blurred under the streetlights, my mind spiraling in 1,000 directions at once. Lauren's words echoed in my head like a taunt. Big deal. People do it all the time. She didn't just cheat, she mocked me for caring. She looked me in the eye, knowing she had betrayed me, and laughed. I should have seen it sooner. The late nights, the constant texting, the sudden interest in going to the gym when she never gave a damn about fitness before. I had ignored every red flag because I didn't want to believe the woman I married was a liar, a manipulator, a complete stranger. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat. I glanced at the screen. Lauren. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again. A text. Don't be childish. Come back and talk like an adult. Childish. She called me childish. I hit the gas, tearing down the empty road, the fury boiling over again. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum. I needed to calm down before I did something I'd regret. Up ahead, I spotted a diner, its neon sign flickering against the dark sky. Without thinking, I pulled into the lot, parked, and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I needed answers. I needed to know how deep this betrayal ran. I grabbed my phone and did what I should have done months ago. I opened her social media. Lauren was careful, but not careful enough. Her Instagram was public, and right there, buried in the comments of her gym photos, were little clues. A fire emoji from some guy named Chad Hunts You. A winking face under a picture of her in leggings. A comment, "Damn, wish I was your workout partner," winky face. I clicked on his profile. Public. Full of gym selfies, shirtless mirror pics, captions like, "Hustle for the muscle." And then, buried between the flexing photos, a video. A group workout clip from a week ago. The camera panned across the gym, laughing, joking, and then, there she was. Lauren. In the background. Sitting on a bench, leaning close to Chad. Whispering in his ear. Her hand casually resting on his thigh. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. This wasn't some one-time mistake. This wasn't just harmless flirting. She had been doing this behind my back for who knows how long, while I was busting my ass at work to give her a good life. I clenched my jaw, breathing through my nose, trying to keep the rage from swallowing me whole. A waitress knocked on my window, making me jump. I rolled it down, my hands still shaking. "You okay, hon?" she asked, her voice gentle but cautious. I exhaled. "Yeah. Just, rough night." She gave me a knowing look. Heartbreak or betrayal? I let out a bitter laugh. Both. She nodded like she'd seen this 100 times before. "Come inside. Coffee's fresh." I hesitated, then shut off the truck and followed her in. The diner was quiet, just a few late-night stragglers nursing cups of coffee. I slid into a booth, my thoughts still a storm inside my head. The waitress poured me a cup, then leaned on the counter, watching me. "Want to talk about it?" I stared at the coffee, swirling the liquid in slow circles. "I just found out my wife's been cheating on me." She didn't look surprised. "And what are you gonna do about it?" That was the question, wasn't it? I thought about going back home, letting her spew more lies, pretending like she had any power left over me. Or I could do something else. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and found the one person who had always had my back. Jake. My best friend since college. The guy who had always told me Lauren was bad news, but I was too blind to listen. I hit call. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice groggy. Dude, it's 1 in the morning. You better be dying. I let out a breath. Not dying. Just officially done being a dumbass. He was silent for a second. Then, she cheated, didn't she? Yeah. A pause. Then, where are you? Diner off 54th. Stay there. I'm coming. I hung up and sat back, the weight in my chest shifting. Not lighter, not yet. But different. I didn't know what the next step was, but one thing was certain. Lauren wasn't going to see this coming. I stared into my coffee, watching the steam rise and disappear. My hands had stopped shaking, but my mind was still a storm. Every memory with Lauren, every kiss, every promise, every damn, I love you, felt like a joke now. A setup to the cruelest punchline. The bell over the diner door jingled, and I looked up to see Jake walk in, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, his hair a mess. He spotted me instantly and made his way over, sliding into the booth across from me. He didn't ask stupid questions. He didn't tell me I told you so. He just looked at me, waiting. I exhaled. She's been cheating on me. Jake leaned back, crossing his arms. For how long? Who knows? I ran a hand through my hair. I caught her at the gym tonight. Some jackass had his hands all over her. She didn't even care. Called me dramatic. His jaw tightened. You beat his ass? Broke his arm, I said flatly. Jake let out a low whistle. Damn. She didn't even flinch. Just told me to get over it. I let out a bitter laugh. Like I was the crazy one. Jake shook his head, drumming his fingers on the table. So what's the plan? You divorcing her? That word, divorce, hit me like a brick. It wasn't that I hadn't thought about it. I had. But saying it out loud would make it real. I gritted my teeth. She's not getting the chance to screw me over in court. Not after this. Jake raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I pulled out my phone, opened Lauren's texts, and slid it across the table. He read them, his expression darkening. Don't be childish. Come back and talk like an adult. We need to be civil about this, Ethan. You can't just run away like some dramatic idiot. You need to come home. You're embarrassing yourself. Jake snorted. She sounds real broken up about it. She doesn't think I'll actually leave, I said, my voice colder than I expected. She thinks I'll come crawling back, that I'll be so wrecked over this that I'll sit there and let her keep screwing around. Jake leaned in, his voice low. So let's make sure she knows she lost. I looked at him. How? He smirked. We hit her where it hurts. And trust me, I know exactly where that is. I frowned. You're enjoying this way too much. Damn right I am, he said. Now, do you want revenge or not? I exhaled. I don't want revenge. I want justice. Jake grinned. Then let's get to work. By the time we left the diner, we had a plan. Lauren had always cared about appearances, how people saw her, how she looked like the perfect wife with the perfect life. She thrived on attention, on admiration. So we were going to take that away. First stop, home. Not her home. Not anymore. I pulled into the driveway, feeling an eerie calm settle over me. This was the last time I'd walk into this house as her husband. Jake followed me inside, and we wasted no time. I grabbed my laptop, logged into our shared accounts, and started pulling out everything that was mine. Bank transfers. Documents. Even the car, her car, was still under my name. I shot off an email to the dealership, letting them know the vehicle needed to be repossessed. She was about to learn what it felt like to have something taken from her. Jake, meanwhile, was packing up my things, tossing clothes into duffel bags, gathering anything valuable that Lauren would think she had a right to keep. He paused when he found our wedding album. "You want this?" he asked. I stared at the cover. Two smiling idiots, dressed in white, promising forever. No. I turned back to my laptop. "Burn it." Jake grinned. Gladly. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I was finally done. My accounts were separated. My name was off the lease. My car was packed. Lauren had no idea she was about to wake up to a world where I no longer existed in her life, but where she would still have to deal with everything she'd done. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Jake clapped me on the shoulder. "You good?" I exhaled. "Better than I've been in years." As we walked out, headlights suddenly flashed across the driveway. Lauren's car. Jake and I stopped, watching as she pulled in. She stepped out, looking pissed. Not sad. Not guilty. Just annoyed. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "You're actually leaving?" I stared at her, feeling nothing. No pain. No anger. Just relief. "Yeah," I said simply. "I am." She scoffed. "You're being so dramatic." Jake let out a low chuckle. "Lady, do you ever shut the hell up?" Lauren shot him a glare. "This isn't your business, Jake." He smirked. "It is now." Her eyes snapped back to me. "This is your big move, Ethan? Running away like a coward?" I met her gaze, unblinking. "No. I'm moving on." She folded her arms. "You really think you're gonna be happier without me?" I smiled. "I know I am." She opened her mouth, but for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't care what she had to say. I turned, got in my truck, and drove away. Lauren was nothing but a speck in my rearview mirror. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The city lights blurred as I drove, the weight in my chest lifting with every mile I put between myself and that lying, cheating, soulless woman. Jake was in the passenger seat, feet up on the dash, grinning like this was the best night of his life. "Man, you have no idea how long I've waited for this moment," he said, shaking his head. I glanced at him. "For me to get cheated on. For you to finally see her for what she is," he corrected. "You were blind, dude. Straight up hypnotized. I mean, I get it, she's hot, she's got that whole pretend to be sweet but actually a nightmare thing going on, but damn, Ethan. She broke you." I tightened my grip on the wheel. He wasn't wrong. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being myself. I had stopped standing up for what I wanted, stopped noticing the red flags because I wanted to believe she was better than this. But now? Now I knew. Jake yawned and stretched. "So what's next? You crashing at my place?" "For now." "Good. But, he hesitated. "You do know she's not gonna take this lying down, right?" I exhaled. "I know." Lauren wasn't the type to accept defeat. She would fight, claw, manipulate. She would cry to her friends, spin the story, make me the villain. But this time, I was ready for her. We pulled into Jake's apartment complex, and the second I parked, my phone buzzed. "Lauren." Again. I ignored it. But then another message came through, and my stomach clenched. "I hope you're happy, Ethan. You've ruined everything." I frowned. I ruined everything? She was the one who lied. She was the one who betrayed me. Another text. You really think this is over? You think you can just leave me? A chill ran down my spine. Jake leaned over, reading the screen. Yeah, she's about to go full psycho. I locked my phone and got out of the car. Inside, Jake tossed me a beer and flopped onto the couch. Alright, man. Let's talk strategy. I took a long sip. Strategy? He smirked. Dude. She's coming for you. She's not gonna cry and eat ice cream like a normal dumped chick. She's gonna go nuclear. I ran a hand down my face. I just want her out of my life. Jake raised an eyebrow. Then you need to stay 10 steps ahead of her. He wasn't wrong. Lauren played dirty. So I had to be smarter. I grabbed my laptop and started making a list. Bank accounts, locked. Shared passwords, changed. My name on anything tied to her, erased. Jake whistled as he watched me work. Damn. You're a man on a mission. I'm not giving her any leverage, I said. Not after what she did. Jake smirked. Now that's the Ethan I remember. A knock on the door. We both froze. Jake frowned, standing up. Who the hell? The knock came again, harder this time. My stomach dropped. I didn't even have to check. I knew. Jake looked through the peephole and groaned. You've got to be kidding me. Lauren. I clenched my jaw. Of course she came. Of course she couldn't just let me go. Jake turned to me. You want me to handle this? I shook my head. No. I got it. I opened the door. Lauren stood there, arms crossed, dressed like she hadn't just been caught with another man's hands all over her. Like she was still in control. Ethan. Her voice was sharp. We need to talk. I stared at her. We did talk. Her lips curled. No, you threw a tantrum and ran away. Like a coward. Jake muttered, oh, for foo, but I held up a hand to stop him. I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me. What do you want, Lauren? She scoffed. Are you serious? You're really just leaving? You're going to throw away our life over a stupid mistake? I let out a bitter laugh. A mistake? I stepped closer, my voice dropping. You weren't sorry. You didn't care. You laughed in my face, Lauren. She rolled her eyes. I was mad. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Oh, I embarrassed you? My blood boiled. You humiliated me for months. How long, Lauren? How long have you been sneaking around? She pursed her lips. That doesn't matter. I shook my head. You're unbelievable. She sighed dramatically. Look. I get that you're upset. But you're not thinking straight. You need me. I smiled. No, Lauren. I don't. Her face darkened. You'll regret this. I leaned in. No. You will. I turned and walked back inside, locking the door behind me. Jake stared at me, wide-eyed. Dude. That was stone cold. I let out a breath. It's done. Jake clapped me on the shoulder. Hell yeah, it is. My phone buzzed again. Lauren's final text. You think you won? Watch your back, Ethan. I stared at it, heart pounding. Jake leaned over. What did she say? I showed him the screen. He whistled. Yup. She's unhinged. I deleted the message and put my phone down. I wasn't afraid of her. Not anymore. Let her try whatever she wanted. I was ready. Emily thought she was untouchable. She thought her little secret was safe, that I was just some clueless husband too blind to see what was happening right under my nose. But she was wrong. Walking into her office that day, I already knew everything. The security footage told me more than I ever wanted to know. Emily, sneaking in after hours, climbing onto her boss's desk like it was her personal throne. The way she threw herself at him, desperate, hungry. And Daniel, smug, confident, like he had every right to take what belonged to me. She was sitting on that same desk when I arrived, her blouse slightly undone, her laugh too sweet to be real. The moment she noticed me, her face twisted in horror. She shot up so fast that the stack of papers beside her toppled to the floor. Daniel barely reacted, just smirked and adjusted his tie like he had nothing to be ashamed of. The room was dead silent. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and let the video play. The sound of her betrayal filled the office. Every gasping breath, every whispered promise of pleasure, every sickening detail was on display for her co-workers to see. Emily's knees buckled. She reached out to steady herself on the desk but missed, collapsing onto the floor. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered a curse under their breath. Daniel's face lost its color as he took a step back, suddenly realizing just how deep he had buried himself. Then, the door swung open. Daniel's wife stood there, her expression unreadable. The office, already suffocating with tension, became deadly silent. Emily, still struggling to breathe, tried to speak, but no words came out. She wasn't ready for what came next. The silence in the office was suffocating. Every pair of eyes locked onto Emily, who lay sprawled on the floor, gasping for air like a fish out of water. I should have felt something, pity, regret, maybe even the sting of lost love, but all I had inside me was a hollow satisfaction. She had built this web of lies, and now she was tangled in it, choking. Daniel stood motionless, his usual cocky smirk wiped clean off his face. His gaze flickered between me and the phone in my hand, then to his wife, Lauren, who had just walked in. She wasn't screaming, crying, or throwing things like Emily probably expected. Instead, she just stood there, eerily calm, her lips pressed into a thin line, her arms crossed over her chest. I turned my attention back to Emily, who was slowly pushing herself off the ground. Her hands trembled as she reached for the edge of the desk to pull herself up. When she finally managed to stand, she didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. Jason, her voice cracked, hoarse and barely audible. I didn't want to hear it. I had already heard enough. I took a slow step forward, keeping my voice steady, controlled. How long? She hesitated. A second too long. Lauren's eyes narrowed. That's what I'd like to know too. Daniel finally snapped out of his daze and tried to take a step toward his wife. Babe, listen. Shut up, she cut him off, her voice sharp enough to slice through steel. Emily's eyes darted between us like a trapped animal looking for an escape. The powerful, confident woman who used to look down on others, who used to talk about how she was the one in control, now looked small, weak, like a pathetic excuse of a person caught in her own filth. She stammered, then swallowed hard. It wasn't serious, Jason. It didn't mean anything. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. The sheer audacity of her words was almost impressive. After everything, she was still trying to downplay it. Not serious? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. You sure sounded serious last night. Her face twisted, lips parting slightly as if she wanted to argue, but she knew she couldn't. The evidence was too damning. The video, the texts, the weeks of sneaking around, it wasn't just some mistake. It was a choice. Over and over again, she had chosen this. Lauren stepped forward, her heels clicking against the floor. So, tell me, Daniel, she said, turning to her husband. How long haven't you been serious about our marriage? He opened his mouth, but she held up a hand to silence him. No, actually, don't answer that. I already know. She exhaled through her nose, nodding to herself. You've always been a liar. I was just too blind to see it. Emily let out a shaky breath. Please, Jason. We can talk about this. I tilted my head, studying her. Now you want to talk. She took a step closer, reaching out as if to touch me, but I recoiled. It didn't mean anything, she repeated desperately, her voice rising in pitch. I was lonely, okay? You've been so distant, and Daniel was he was just there. A bitter laugh rumbled in my chest. So this is my fault now? No. I mean, she shook her head frantically. I made a mistake. Lauren let out a dry chuckle. A mistake, she repeated, her voice dripping with venom. That's cute. You don't just fall onto your boss's lap, Emily. You don't just accidentally sneak into his office after hours. Emily's eyes snapped to her, filled with barely contained hatred. For a second, the mask slipped, and I saw the real her, the one who never took responsibility, who always played the victim. This isn't about you, Lauren, she spat. Lauren arched an eyebrow. Oh, but it is. Because while you were busy spreading your legs for my husband, I was the one at home taking care of his kids, thinking we had a real family. She stepped even closer, her voice dangerously low. So yeah, Emily, this is very much about me. Daniel, still frozen in place, finally seemed to gather himself enough to speak. Babe, come on, don't do this here. Lauren turned on him, laughing. Oh, now you care about privacy? That's funny, considering the whole office just got a front row seat to your little performance. Emily clenched her fists. This isn't fair, she muttered under her breath. I scoffed. Fair? She flinched at the way I said it, like the word itself burned. You want to talk about fair, Emily? My voice hardened. What was fair about you sneaking around behind my back for months? What was fair about you lying to my face, gaslighting me every time I asked where you were? What was fair about you making me feel like a fool in front of all these people? She had no answer for that. The weight of it all finally crashed down on her, and for the first time since this all started, I saw tears forming in her eyes. Not the fake ones she used when she wanted sympathy. These were real. Not because she was sorry, but because she knew she had lost. Lauren turned to me, her expression unreadable. So, Jason, she said. What are you gonna do? I knew what she was really asking. Was I going to let her get away with this? I turned to Emily, who was still staring at me like I held her fate in my hands. I'm done, I said simply. Her lips parted slightly, as if she hadn't considered that possibility. As if she thought she could still salvage something from this disaster. Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. All right, let's just. He didn't get to finish his sentence. Lauren, without a single warning, lifted her hand and slapped him so hard that the sound echoed through the office. The entire room went dead silent. Emily gasped. Daniel staggered back, eyes wide. Lauren. She shook her head. I'm done too, she said. Then, without another word, she turned on her heel and walked away. Emily turned back to me, her face pale. Jason, please. I took one last look at her, at the woman I once loved. Then, I walked away too. Walking away should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like stepping into a void. The moment I left that office, the weight of what had just happened pressed down on me. Emily's voice still echoed in my head, her pathetic pleas, the desperation in her eyes. But it was too late. I stepped out onto the street, the cold air hitting me like a slap. My hands clenched into fists, my body still tense from the adrenaline. I had exposed her. I had humiliated her. So why did I feel like I was the one who lost something? My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a split second, I thought it was Emily, but when I pulled it out, Lauren's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Jason. Her voice was steady, controlled, but there was a sharpness underneath, like she was holding back an explosion. Where are you? Outside, I said. Just needed some air. A short silence. Then, meet me at the bar on 5th. Now. I almost refused. I wanted to be alone, to process everything, to drown in my own thoughts. But something in her tone made me nod, even though she couldn't see me. I'll be there in 10. The bar was half empty when I arrived. Lauren sat at a corner table, a half-empty glass of whiskey in front of her. She looked up as I approached, her expression unreadable. I slid into the seat across from her, exhaling slowly. You okay? She let out a dry chuckle. That's a stupid question. I nodded. Fair enough. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The weight of betrayal sat between us like a thick fog, suffocating, inescapable. Then Lauren leaned back, crossing her arms. You looked calm back there, she said. Colder than I expected. I shrugged. Guess I had enough time to process it before today. She scoffed. Must be nice. I found out about this right there in that office, in front of a dozen people. She took a sip of her drink, then tilted her head, studying me. So what now? I ran a hand down my face. Divorce, obviously. She let out a bitter laugh. Yeah. Same. She shook her head. I should have seen this coming. I mean, the signs were all there. The late meetings. The way he started acting like I was just there, like an afterthought. I clenched my jaw. Same with Emily. Every time I asked her what was going on, she had an excuse. Work stress. Hormones. Even blamed me for not paying enough attention to her. Lauren rolled her eyes. Classic. Silence settled again. It wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy. Like we were two people stranded in the same sinking boat, staring at the wreckage around us, wondering how the hell we got here. Finally, she exhaled. You know what pisses me off the most? I looked at her. That they get to move on. They'll cry a little, feel guilty for a week, then go back to their lives. Meanwhile, we're stuck with the damage. She wasn't wrong. Emily would play the victim. She'd spin some sob story to our mutual friends, try to make it seem like I was some neglectful husband who pushed her into another man's arms. And Daniel? He'd do what men like him always do, shrug it off, move on to the next woman, and never face any real consequences. Lauren swirled her drink, then looked up at me. You want to make them pay? Her words hung in the air between us. I studied her for a long moment. There was something dark in her eyes, something sharp. A hunger for justice, or maybe just revenge. I leaned forward. I'm listening. That night, we sat in that bar for hours, plotting. Not something illegal, not something stupid. Just consequences. Daniel and Emily had built their little world on deception, and we were about to burn it to the ground. By the time I walked out of there, I knew one thing for certain: Emily's nightmare was just beginning. Revenge isn't about anger. It's about control. And after months of being played, lied to, and humiliated, I was finally taking mine back. Lauren and I didn't waste time. We both had something the other needed: leverage. While she knew the ins and outs of Daniel's finances, his hidden accounts, and the dirty little secrets he thought were safe, I had Emily's own web of lies at my fingertips. Her texts, her emails, the evidence of her affair stretching back further than she ever admitted. We weren't going to expose them in some grand, dramatic explosion. No. That would be too easy. We wanted something that lasted, something that ate away at them like termites in the foundation of their perfect little world. The first step was Daniel's career. Lauren was smart. Smarter than he ever gave her credit for. She had access to his personal and business records, things he had conveniently forgotten to share with her. Turns out, Daniel had more than just an affair to worry about. His company had financial skeletons that wouldn't look too good under public scrutiny. Lauren sent an anonymous tip to a journalist known for exposing corporate fraud. It wasn't outright illegal, but it was dirty enough to get an investigation rolling. Within a week, Daniel's board of directors was questioning him, shareholders were getting nervous, and whispers started spreading about mismanagement. And just like that, his golden boy reputation began to crack. Emily was next. Unlike Daniel, she didn't have a career that could be easily ruined, but she did have something she valued even more, her image. She had spent years carefully curating her social circle, positioning herself as the perfect wife, the one who had it all together. I knew exactly how to take that from her. I sent the security footage, just a snippet, to a private group chat of our mutual friends. No explanation. No dramatic message. Just the raw, undeniable truth. Within minutes, my phone started blowing up. Messages flooded in. Shock. Betrayal. People asking me if it was real, if Emily had really done what they were seeing. And Emily? She called me 23 times in a single hour. I didn't answer. I let her stew in it, let her feel what it was like to have the walls closing in. But I wasn't done yet. 2 days later, Emily showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find her standing there, her makeup smeared, eyes red from crying. She looked nothing like the confident, manipulative woman I had once loved. "Jason, please," she whispered. "Can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Talk? About what?" Her lip trembled. You sent that video to everyone." I didn't deny it. She let out a shaky breath. "You're ruining me." A humorless chuckle escaped me. "Ruining you? Emily, you ruined us the second you spread your legs for your boss." She flinched at the harshness of my words but didn't deny them. "I wasn't thinking," she mumbled. "I was lonely, I was." "Spare me," I cut her off. "You weren't lonely. You were greedy. You wanted the stability of a husband and the excitement of an affair. You thought you could have both." Her hands clenched into fists. "You don't understand." I arched an eyebrow. "Then explain it to me." She opened her mouth but faltered. Because there was no explanation that could justify what she did. No excuse that could make it right. Instead, her expression twisted into something uglier. "You know, Jason, you're not innocent either." I barked out a laugh. "Oh, this I gotta hear." She straightened, her tears forgotten. "You were always so busy, always so distant. What was I supposed to do? Just sit around and wait for you to pay attention to me?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Yes, Emily. That's how a marriage works. If there's a problem, you talk about it. You don't go screwing your boss in his office." She scowled. "You're acting like you're some perfect husband." I shrugged. Maybe I wasn't perfect. But I was faithful. Her face darkened, her breathing shallow. She had lost control of the situation, and she knew it. "This isn't over," she hissed. I smirked. "Oh, Emily. It's already over. You just haven't accepted it yet." Then, without another word, I shut the door in her face. Back inside, I checked my phone. A message from Lauren popped up. "Lauren, Daniel just got served divorce papers. His lawyer says he's panicking." "Good. My reply was simple. Me, Emily's spiraling. It's only a matter of time before she breaks completely. I leaned back on the couch, exhaling slowly. This wasn't just about getting even anymore. This was about watching them fall apart, piece by pathetic piece. Emily was unraveling. I could see it in every desperate message, every missed call, every time she tried to show up at my place just to get turned away at the door. She had lost control, and for the first time in her life, there was no way to manipulate her way out of it. I ignored her, let her stew in the mess she created. But she wasn't the only one feeling the heat. Daniel's downfall was happening faster than we expected. Lauren had hit him where it hurt, and now the cracks in his so-called perfect life were turning into gaping holes. His company was in full-blown damage control mode. The investigation into his shady business dealings had leaked to the media, and suddenly, shareholders were demanding answers. The smug, untouchable executive was now scrambling to explain why money had been funneled into suspicious accounts. Lauren sent me updates every day, each one more satisfying than the last. Lauren, they're forcing him to take an indefinite leave. The board doesn't trust him anymore. Me, good. Let him rot. But the real masterpiece? That came when Lauren played her final card. She had been patient, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when she did, it was brutal. Daniel had always been a control freak, obsessed with his image. He loved being admired, respected. So when Lauren leaked his affair, complete with receipts, texts, and some very compromising photos, to the business community, it was game over. The scandal spread like wildfire. Clients started pulling contracts. His reputation tanked overnight. And just like that, the man who thought he could have it all was left with nothing. Emily, on the other hand, wasn't handling things as gracefully. I found out through a mutual friend that she had moved out of our old house. Apparently, she was crashing at a friend's place, since no one else wanted to be associated with her now that her lies were out in the open. Her social life, once so carefully curated, had crumbled. The same people she used to gossip with were now whispering about her. And then, one night, she finally lost it. I was at home, sipping a whiskey, enjoying the silence, when the banging on my door started. Not knocking. Banging. I sighed, already knowing who it was. When I opened the door, Emily stood there, looking like a complete wreck. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smudged, her eyes wild with frustration. She reeked of alcohol. I leaned against the doorframe, unimpressed. "You look like hell." She shoved past me, storming into my apartment. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she spat, her voice slurred but still filled with venom. I shut the door behind her, taking my time before responding. "Oh, I don't know, Emily. Maybe just exposed you for the lying, cheating snake that you are." She let out a bitter laugh, pacing in front of me. "You think you're some kind of hero?" She turned, her glare sharp. "You ruined my life, Jason." I scoffed. "You ruined it yourself." She clenched her jaw, fists tightening at her sides. "Do you even care? Do you enjoy watching me suffer?" I took a slow sip of my drink, meeting her gaze without a shred of sympathy. "You enjoyed humiliating me. Lying to my face. Making a fool out of me in front of everyone. So yeah, maybe I do enjoy watching you finally face the consequences." Her nostrils flared, and for a second, I thought she might actually lunge at me. Then, her expression crumbled. She sank onto my couch, burying her face in her hands. "I have nothing left," she muttered. "Everyone turned their backs on me. My friends, my family, even Daniel doesn't want anything to do with me now that his world is burning." I stayed silent, letting her feel the weight of her own destruction. After a long pause, she lifted her head, eyes red-rimmed but still filled with something desperate. "Jason," her voice softened, almost pleading. We had something real once. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I studied her for a long moment. This was her last trick. The final manipulation. She wasn't sorry. She was desperate. And she thought that maybe, just maybe, she could still dig her claws back into me. I set my drink down, leaning in slightly. You want the truth, Emily? My voice was calm, steady. She nodded quickly, hope flickering in her eyes. The only thing I regret, I said slowly, is not walking away sooner. The hope shattered. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She sat there, completely still, as if my words had finally broken her. I stood up, motioning toward the door. Get out. For the first time in her life, Emily had nothing left to say. She got up, shoulders slumped, and walked to the door. But before she left, she turned back one last time. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. I met her gaze without flinching. But you did. She swallowed hard, then stepped out into the night. As the door clicked shut behind her, a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying lifted. She was finally gone. And I had never felt freer. The silence after Emily left wasn't just peaceful, it was liberating. No more lies, no more manipulations, no more waiting for the inevitable betrayal. The chapter was closed, but I wasn't done just yet. Emily had been desperate, but desperation breeds recklessness. And recklessness? That makes people sloppy. I had no doubt she'd try something else. Maybe an attempt to salvage her image, twist the narrative to make herself look like the victim. I wasn't about to let that happen. The next morning, I met up with Lauren again. She was already waiting for me at a small cafe, dressed sharply as always, her expression cool and composed. But I could see it in her eyes, she was enjoying this as much as I was. I sat down across from her, and she immediately slid her phone across the table. Emily's been busy, she said with a smirk. I glanced down at the screen. A social media post, Emily's attempt at damage control. I made a mistake. But no one deserves to be publicly humiliated the way I was. We all have our flaws, and I hope that one day, those who hurt me will find it in their hearts to forgive. I let out a short laugh. She really thinks she can play the victim? Lauren shrugged, stirring her coffee. That's what they do. When all else fails, turn on the waterworks and hope people forget what really happened. I leaned back in my chair. What's Daniel doing? She smirked. Oh, he's drowning. His reputation is in shambles, his company is distancing themselves from him, and I just finalized the paperwork to take half of everything. She took a slow sip of her coffee. He tried to beg, you know. Said we could work through this. I raised an eyebrow. And? She scoffed. I laughed in his face. Then I told him the only thing he was working through was an empty bank account and a ruined career. I smirked. Brutal. She tilted her head, watching me. And Emily? I exhaled. She showed up at my place last night. Lauren's eyes lit up with amusement. Let me guess, tears, apologies, and one last attempt at manipulation? I nodded. She tried everything. Played the "we had something real" card. Even told me she had nothing left. Lauren leaned forward slightly, intrigued. And? I told her the only thing I regret is not leaving her sooner. Lauren's lips curled into a smirk. Ouch. I shrugged. She deserved worse. She studied me for a moment, then leaned back, crossing her legs. So, what's next? I considered the question. The revenge was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Emily and Daniel were suffering, but they were still breathing. And knowing them, they'd try to claw their way back into their old lives. I wasn't going to let that happen. Emily's trying to play the sympathy card, I said. I think it's time people knew the whole truth. Lauren raised an eyebrow. You mean? I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I have a little more footage. Things Emily wouldn't want getting out. Lauren's smirk widened. You really had all your bases covered, didn't you? I met her gaze. She thought she was smart. She thought I was just some clueless husband she could manipulate forever. I leaned forward. She underestimated me. Lauren's eyes gleamed with something dark, something almost admiring. Let's burn them both to the ground. I clicked send. Within an hour, the footage was everywhere. Emily's breakdown happened in real time. The moment the new video dropped, she lost whatever fragile support she had left. The comments were brutal. So she wasn't just cheating, she was laughing about it behind his back? Wow. And she had the nerve to play the victim? I feel bad for her husband. She's a total snake. I knew it was bad when she tried to call me again. I let it ring, watching as the call went to voicemail. A minute later, a text popped up. Emily, you did this. You ruined me. Are you happy now? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, I typed out my reply. Me, no, Emily. You ruined yourself. I put my phone down and exhaled. It was over. The next day, Lauren and I met again, this time for drinks. She lifted her glass toward me. To freedom. I clinked mine against hers. To justice. We both took a sip, letting the moment settle between us. Then she smirked. You know, Jason, you and I make a good team. I chuckled. You thinking what I'm thinking? She tilted her head. That some people in this world deserve to have their lives dismantled? I grinned. Exactly. She leaned in slightly, a playful glint in her eye. Then maybe we should make a habit of it. I raised an eyebrow. You suggesting we become professional revenge dealers? She shrugged, smirking. Why not? We're clearly good at it. I laughed, shaking my head. You're dangerous, Lauren. She sipped her drink. And you like that? I didn't deny it. As I looked at her, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about something bigger. A fresh start. A new game. And this time, I was going to play it on my terms. Revenge was addictive. The rush of seeing them fall apart, watching Emily and Daniel scramble to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives, it was intoxicating. But even with all the damage we'd inflicted, something told me they weren't done. People like them never accept defeat. They regroup, they scheme, they try to crawl back to where they once stood. Lauren knew it too. That's why she wasn't celebrating just yet. She sat across from me, sipping her drink, her fingers tapping against the glass. Daniel's not the type to stay down, she mused. He's going to try something. I nodded. And Emily? Lauren smirked. She's too narcissistic to accept being the villain in this story. She'll try to spin things, find a new angle, maybe even play the redemption arc. I exhaled slowly, running a hand down my face. Then we need to make sure they stay buried. She raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. We've destroyed their reputations. Now we go after their future. Lauren's eyes gleamed with interest. Go on. Emily made her first move the very next day. I wasn't surprised when I saw a new social media post from her, this time, a sob story. A long-winded caption about healing and learning from mistakes. The comments were mixed. Some people saw through it, but others were already offering sympathy, saying everyone deserved a second chance. I scoffed. She really thinks people will buy this? Lauren glanced at my phone and smirked. Some will. People love a comeback story. But that's why we're not going to let her have one. I set my drink down. How? Lauren leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. She still has friends in certain social circles, right? People who haven't fully cut her off. I nodded. A slow smile spread across Lauren's face. Then it's time they saw who Emily really is. She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward me. It was a recording, not of the affair, but of a private conversation Emily had with one of her friends. I pressed play. Emily's voice came through, sharp and bitter. Jason thinks he's won. But he's pathetic. He needed a public spectacle to feel powerful because he never had any power in our marriage. He was just a safety net. A backup plan. I clenched my jaw. Lauren tilted her head. Still feel bad for her? I exhaled slowly. No. Good. She smirked. Because once this gets out, her redemption arc will crash and burn before it even starts. I didn't hesitate. I sent it out. Within an hour, the internet was on fire. Emily's so-called apology was now being picked apart, her true colors exposed. People were calling her out, dragging her for her arrogance. Brands she had once worked with, companies that paid her for influencer deals, began dropping her. By the end of the day, she deleted her post. Lauren and I toasted to another win. But Daniel? He wasn't as easy to break. While Emily spiraled, Daniel was already trying to rebuild. He knew his corporate career was over, so he started something new, a consulting firm, positioning himself as a business mentor. I shook my head when Lauren sent me the link to his new website. Unbelievable, I muttered. He thinks he can just pivot like nothing happened? Lauren sipped her wine. That's the thing about guys like Daniel. They never really think they'll face consequences. They believe they're untouchable. I smirked. Then let's touch him. Lauren grinned. I like the way you think. We got to work. Daniel's biggest weakness was trust. He had spent years making shady deals, cutting corners, and screwing people over. And now, it was time for those people to talk. Lauren had contacts. She reached out to former employees, business partners, and even competitors, people who had been burned by Daniel before. Within days, whispers about his consulting firm turned into a firestorm. Articles started circulating about his past, about his questionable ethics, about how his last company had barely avoided a full-blown fraud scandal. Clients backed out. Investors walked away. And just like that, Daniel's fresh start was dead on arrival. Lauren watched the fallout unfold, sipping her drink like it was the best entertainment she'd ever seen. You know, she mused, I almost feel bad for them. I raised an eyebrow. She smirked. Almost. The final nail in the coffin came a week later. Emily and Daniel, once partners in deception, were now enemies. A leaked text thread surfaced. Daniel had thrown Emily under the bus in a desperate attempt to salvage his own name. He told reporters she had manipulated him, that she was the one who initiated the affair, that he had been blinded by her seduction. Emily, furious and humiliated, retaliated. She exposed more dirt on Daniel, revealing his financial schemes, his history of affairs, even personal details he never wanted the public to know. The two of them tore each other apart, burning whatever was left of their reputations in the process. I sat back and watched with a satisfied smirk. Lauren chuckled beside me. They did half the work for us. I nodded. Poetic justice. She clinked her glass against mine. To karma. I took a sip, exhaling slowly. To closure. She studied me for a moment, then tilted her head. Do you actually feel like you got closure? I thought about it. The betrayal, the lies, the months of uncertainty. And now? Now, I was free. A slow smile spread across my face. Yeah, I said. I do. But the way Lauren looked at me told me she saw something else. This wasn't just about closure anymore. This was about something bigger. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited for what came next. Emily and Daniel had destroyed themselves. Lauren and I didn't even have to make the final move, they did it for us. The moment Daniel threw Emily under the bus, their fragile alliance shattered. Their reputations, their social lives, their carefully curated images, everything they had worked for came crashing down in a spectacular, public disaster. Daniel tried to rebrand as a victim. Claimed Emily had seduced him, manipulated him, dragged him into an affair he never truly wanted. But people saw through his lies. His past was too tainted, his business dealings too shady, and his betrayal of his own wife was too public to ignore. Emily, on the other hand, lost everything. Her social circle abandoned her. Her brand deals vanished. Every pathetic attempt at regaining sympathy was met with ridicule. She went from the woman who thought she could have it all, to someone who had nothing. And that should have been the end of it. But Emily wasn't done. The night she showed up at my apartment again, I wasn't surprised. She was desperate. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she lingered at my doorstep like she had nowhere else to go. Her makeup was smudged, her clothes wrinkled, her usual arrogance completely stripped away. "Jason," she said softly. "Please, just let me talk." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Why?" She swallowed hard, looking down at her hands. "Because I need you to understand." I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "Emily, I understand perfectly. You wanted everything: security, excitement, control. You thought you could have it all without consequences." Her lip trembled. I was stupid. I didn't know what I was doing. I chuckled darkly. "No, Emily. You knew exactly what you were doing." She flinched, her nails digging into her palms. "I miss you," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I stared at her for a long moment. And then I laughed. Not out of amusement. Out of sheer disbelief. "Miss me?" I repeated. "You miss me? The same husband you disrespected, humiliated, and lied to for months?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't buying it. "You don't miss me, Emily," I said coldly. "You miss the life you had. You miss the version of me who would have forgiven you. The man who would have bent over backwards to make you feel better about your own mistakes." She shook her head frantically. "No, it's not like that." I cut her off. "I don't care." Her breath hitched. "I don't care what you feel. I don't care what you want. And I sure as hell don't care about your fake apologies." I stepped forward, forcing her to back up. "You burned every bridge between us, and now you want me to help you swim? Too bad, Emily. You drowned yourself." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Please. I have nothing left." I held her gaze for a long, tense moment. Then I leaned in slightly and whispered, "Not my problem." And with that, I shut the door in her face. The next morning, Lauren called me. "She's done," she said simply. "Emily deleted all her social media. She's gone off the grid." I exhaled. "Good. And Daniel?" she asked. I smirked. "Officially irrelevant." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, Lauren chuckled. "We did good, didn't we?" I leaned back in my chair, letting the satisfaction settle in. "Yeah. We did." Another pause. This one lingered. Then Lauren said, "So, what now?" I thought about it. For months, my life had revolved around exposing them, tearing them down, making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. But now? Now I was free. And that feeling, the rush, the power, it was addictive. I had been a fool once. A man who trusted too easily, who believed in loyalty even when it wasn't deserved. But that man was gone. I wasn't just a victim of betrayal anymore. I was someone to be feared. And as I listened to the way Lauren's voice carried that same dangerous thrill, I knew I wasn't alone in that. A slow smile spread across my face. "We find our next target," I said. Lauren's laughter was low, smooth, like the beginning of something dangerous. "I was hoping you'd say that." I was calmly driving on a long stretch of road, the kind that goes on forever. It was just another family road trip with my wife, Lisa, and our 2 daughters, Emily and Ava. The fall leaves were starting to turn orange, and the wind outside was whispering against the windows. The girls were busy in the back seat, quietly bickering over some toy, while Lisa sat beside me, staring out of the window with that vacant look she'd been wearing a lot lately. I had noticed it, but I didn't want to dig too deep. Sometimes, when you feel something's off, it's easier to pretend everything is fine. At least for a while. Then, out of nowhere, a black sedan swerved right in front of us, barely missing my bumper by inches. I slammed the brakes, my heart pounding. Before I could even register what was happening, the car screeched to a stop in front of us. A man, tall, bald, with fury in his eyes, jumped out, pointing a gun straight at me. "You bastard," he shouted, veins bulging out of his neck. "Get out of the car, all of you. I'm taking your wife." I froze. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard that my knuckles turned white. I could feel the heat rushing to my face, my pulse thudding in my ears. My first thought was my daughters. I turned to check on them. They were wide-eyed, mouths hanging open in shock. Lisa, on the other hand, had gone ghostly pale. Her eyes darted back and forth between me and the man, panic crawling across her face. "What the hell is going on, Lisa?" I muttered under my breath, still too shocked to move. "Get out of the car," the man yelled again, stepping closer. I could see the glint of the gun's barrel as he raised it higher. This was real. This wasn't a nightmare. But it sure as hell felt like one. I didn't know what was worse, this man standing here with a gun or the horrifying realization dawning on me, this was her lover. This was the man she'd been sneaking around with, lying to me about late nights at work or sudden girls' nights. "Matt," Lisa whispered, her voice shaking. "Please, don't make this worse." Make it worse? My head was spinning. My daughters. My wife. A gun. Her lover. How did we end up here? And what the hell had I done to deserve this? I slowly reached for the door handle, my mind scrambling for some kind of solution. My body moved on instinct, but inside, I was shattered. Every part of me wanted to grab Lisa by the arm and demand an explanation, right then and there. But with my daughters in the back seat and a gun pointed at my face, I didn't have time for that. I opened the door and stepped out into the chilly autumn air. This wasn't just the end of a road trip, it felt like the end of my entire life as I knew it. As I stepped out of the car, my legs felt like jelly. My eyes were glued to the man in front of me, his hand gripping the gun like it was an extension of his anger. My mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, but I was paralyzed by shock. How could this be happening? And more importantly, why? The man, this stranger who seemed to know so much about me, was pacing like a wild animal. His breath came out in jagged bursts, and I could almost see the fury radiating off him. He took another step closer. "Tell them, Lisa," he spat. "Tell them who I am, or I swear, I'll do it myself." I turned to Lisa, my heart breaking with every second. She was still sitting in the car, her body frozen in place, her face drained of all color. She didn't even have the decency to look me in the eye. For a split second, I wondered if she was more afraid of me knowing the truth or the man with the gun. "Lisa!" I barked, louder than I intended, my voice cracking with the weight of betrayal. She slowly opened the door and stepped out, still avoiding my gaze. I could see her trembling, but it wasn't from the cold. It was from the web of lies she had been spinning. I had trusted her for over a decade. We had built a life together, 2 kids, a home, memories. And now this? "Matt," she started, her voice barely a whisper. "I can explain." "Explain?" I cut her off, feeling the rage boil up inside me. "Explain what? That you've been sneaking around with this piece of work while I'm at home with our daughters? That all those nights you said you were working late were lies?" The man slammed the side of the car with his free hand, startling both of us. "She's not yours anymore," he shouted, his voice shaking. "She's mine. She's been mine for months. You had your chance." I felt the ground shift beneath me. Months? How long had this been going on? How many nights had I lain beside her, thinking everything was fine, while she was out with him? I could barely process it. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a painful rhythm that echoed the chaos around me. "Matt," Lisa began, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could hear was the ringing in my ears and the sound of my world shattering piece by piece. My daughters. Oh God, my daughters. They were still in the car, watching this entire nightmare unfold. "Get back in the car," I said quietly, not even recognizing my own voice. "We're leaving." The man stepped in front of me, his eyes blazing. "You're not taking her anywhere. She's coming with me. Lisa's not yours anymore, man. Deal with it." Lisa just stood there, looking between us, tears welling in her eyes but no words coming out. She didn't even fight for me. She didn't even try to stop this madness. "Is that true, Lisa?" I asked, my voice raw. "Is this really what you want?" She finally looked at me, and in that moment, I could see the truth written all over her face. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't even remorse. It was just apathy. Like she had already checked out of our marriage long ago and hadn't bothered to tell me. She hesitated, but then I saw it, her shoulders straightened, and she stood a little taller. Her lips tightened into a thin line. "Yes, Matt. I'm leaving. I'm going with him." It felt like she had just punched me in the gut. Every emotion I had been holding back, the confusion, the anger, the sadness, all crashed over me at once. This wasn't some horrible mistake. This wasn't something we could fix. She had made her choice. "You selfish bee," I stopped myself, catching my breath. I couldn't believe this. Not here. Not like this. Without another word, Lisa turned toward the man, and for a brief moment, they exchanged a look, a silent understanding between the two of them that made me sick to my stomach. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip apart the fabric of reality that had twisted my life into this surreal nightmare. But instead, I just stood there, frozen, watching as my wife, the mother of my children, walked away from me without a second thought. The man, satisfied with her answer, lowered the gun. "Good choice," he muttered to her. Then he turned to me, smirking like he had won some kind of prize. "She's mine now, Matt. Get used to it." Before I could respond, I heard a small voice from behind me. "Emily." My 8-year-old daughter was standing there, holding her little sister Ava's hand, both of them wide-eyed and scared out of their minds. "Daddy?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "What's happening?" My heart shattered into a million pieces. How could I explain this to them? How could I ever make them understand what had just happened? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself for their sake. "Get back in the car, girls. We're going home." And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my life was gone. The drive home was painfully quiet. The once lively chatter of my daughters, Emily and Ava, was replaced by silence. They sat huddled together in the back seat, their eyes wide and confused. I could feel their fear, their questions hanging heavy in the air. But what could I say? How do you explain to your children that their mother just walked away from all of you without a shred of remorse? Lisa's absence was deafening. I kept glancing at the empty seat beside me, half expecting her to be there, to crack some excuse, or maybe even apologize. But the truth had hit me hard back on that road. She was gone. Gone in every way that mattered. And I hadn't even seen it coming. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles pale, the cold reality still sinking in. That bastard, the man with the gun, had taken more than just my wife. He had taken the image of the life I thought I had, the family I thought we were. As the miles passed, my mind wandered to every little thing I had overlooked. The late nights at work. The girls' weekends. All those times she had been distant, barely there. I had convinced myself that it was just stress, that it was normal. I wanted to believe we were okay. But deep down, there had been signs. I had been too blind, or maybe too trusting, to see them. "Daddy," Emily's small voice broke the silence, pulling me back into the moment. "Where's Mommy? Why did she go with that man?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. How could I explain something I barely understood myself? "Mommy. Mommy's not going to be with us for a while," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "She needs some time away." "Did we do something wrong?" Ava, who was only 5, asked, her big brown eyes staring at me through the rearview mirror. My heart twisted. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. This has nothing to do with you." I wanted to pull over, to turn around and drive to wherever Lisa and that man had gone. I wanted to shake her, scream at her, demand answers. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't change anything. She had made her choice, and for whatever twisted reason, she had chosen him. I kept driving, each mile heavier than the last. The weight of everything, my daughter's innocence, the betrayal, the shattered future, was like an anvil on my chest. How was I going to explain this to their grandparents? To our friends? I could already hear the pitying voices, the awkward silences that would follow when people realized what had happened. But none of that compared to the sickening dread of knowing I had to face my daughters every day and somehow pretend that everything was going to be okay. When in reality, I had no idea how to fix this. No idea how to move forward. Later that night, after I had tucked the girls into bed and reassured them with promises I wasn't sure I could keep, I sat in the dark living room, alone with my thoughts. My mind kept replaying the events of the day like a broken record. The car swerving in front of us. The man's furious face. Lisa's cold, distant words. How had I let things get so bad? Was I just that blind, or had Lisa really become that good of a liar? My phone buzzed on the coffee table, startling me out of my thoughts. I reached for it, my heart skipping a beat. Maybe it was Lisa. Maybe she had come to her senses and was calling to apologize, to explain. But no. It wasn't her. It was a text from her mother. "Matt, where's Lisa? I've been trying to reach her. Everything okay?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What could I possibly say? I didn't even have the words to describe what had happened. How do you tell your mother-in-law that her daughter just walked out on her family for some lowlife who threatened you with a gun? Instead of responding, I turned the phone face down on the table. I couldn't deal with that right now. I couldn't deal with any of it. I leaned back on the couch, closing my eyes, trying to block out the flood of emotions crashing over me. Anger, sadness, betrayal, each one hitting me like a punch to the gut. I had never felt so powerless, so utterly defeated. The silence in the house was suffocating. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside felt like a reminder that Lisa was gone. And no matter how much I wanted to fix things, to make everything right for my daughters, I knew that some things were beyond repair. Hours passed, and I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to one thought: what now? How do you pick up the pieces after something like this? Lisa wasn't just my wife, she was the mother of my children. And now she was gone, leaving me to clean up the mess she had created. I stood up, pacing the room, feeling the weight of every step. Divorce. The word hung in the air like poison. I hadn't wanted to think about it, but now, it seemed inevitable. Lisa had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and there was no coming back from that. I could feel my pulse quickening, my chest tightening with rage. Not just at Lisa, but at myself, for being so blind, for letting things get to this point without even realizing it. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through old photos. Pictures of our family. The girls' birthday parties, vacations we'd taken, smiling holiday portraits. All those moments that felt so perfect at the time. Now they were just reminders of a lie I had been living. I tossed the phone aside, frustration boiling over. I couldn't stand it anymore. Everything had changed in the blink of an eye, and there was no going back. The only question left was, where do I go from here? The next few days were a blur. I was going through the motions, getting the girls ready for school, pretending everything was normal when, deep down, nothing was normal. The weight of Lisa's betrayal clung to me like a dark cloud, and I knew I couldn't escape it. I was sitting at the kitchen table one evening, staring blankly at the unpaid bills piling up in front of me, when my phone buzzed again. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Matt, a familiar voice whispered on the other end. It was Lisa. My grip on the phone tightened instantly, my heart racing. You have some nerve calling me, I spat, standing up from the table. I couldn't help it, the rage I had been trying to suppress for days came bubbling up. After everything you've done, you call me like it's nothing? I need to talk to you, she said quietly, almost nervously. Please, can we meet? Meet? I barked. What could you possibly have to say to me, Lisa? You already said everything back on that road when you walked away from your family. Matt, please, she said, her voice cracking slightly. It's not that simple. Not that simple? I repeated, my anger simmering just below the surface. You destroyed everything. You left our daughters, Lisa. You left me for some psycho who pulls a gun on his lover's family in the middle of the road. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, but no words came. She had no defense, no excuse that could make any of this better. But I agreed to meet her anyway. I needed to see her face one more time, to confront her about everything, to demand answers. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place we had once frequented on lazy Sunday mornings when we were still happy. Now, it felt foreign, like I was walking into the ruins of something long dead. Lisa was already sitting in the corner, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her. She looked different. Her usual confidence was gone. Her hair was messy, and her eyes were hollow, almost lost. Matt, she started, but I cut her off before she could even begin. Why, Lisa? I asked, my voice trembling with frustration. Why him? Why now? Why this? She looked down at her coffee cup, her hands shaking slightly. I don't know, she whispered. Bullsh, I muttered, shaking my head in disbelief. You know. You know exactly why you did this. You don't accidentally have an affair for months. You don't just fall into bed with someone else. You planned this. You lied to me, to our daughters, to everyone. I was unhappy, she finally blurted out, her eyes meeting mine. I haven't been happy for a long time, Matt. It wasn't just about him. It was about me. I felt trapped, like I was drowning in this life. I stared at her, my chest tightening. Trapped? You were trapped in a life we built together? Trapped by our daughters? By me? I didn't know how to tell you, she continued, her voice shaky. I didn't know how to make you understand. And then I met him, and he made me feel alive again. I know it's wrong. I know I've hurt you and the girls. But I don't know how to fix it. I felt my stomach twist in disgust. So, what? You're telling me this is my fault? That I somehow pushed you into his arms? Into his bed? Her eyes flashed with guilt, and she shook her head quickly. No, that's not what I'm saying. I didn't know how else to deal with what I was feeling. I needed something different. Something more. More? I scoffed, unable to believe what I was hearing. You threw away everything we had for more? For some thrill with a man who literally pulled a gun on your family? Lisa's face paled, and she dropped her gaze. He wasn't supposed to do that. He wasn't. I didn't think it would get that far. I didn't know how to stop it. You didn't know how to stop it? I repeated, incredulous. You didn't know how to stop yourself from destroying your family? I could feel the weight of her betrayal crushing down on me, and all the anger I had been holding back came spilling out. You chose this, Lisa. You chose him. You left me, you left our daughters, for what? For some temporary escape? You could have talked to me. We could have worked through this together. But no, you decided to take the coward's way out. She was crying now, her shoulders shaking as tears streamed down her face. But it did nothing for me. I couldn't find it in me to care about her tears. Not anymore. What do you want from me, Lisa? I asked, my voice cold. Why are you here? Because if you're hoping for forgiveness, you're not getting it. I just wanted to explain. She choked out, wiping at her eyes. I just wanted you to know that it wasn't about hating you. I still care about you and the girls. But I'm not coming back. I can't. It's too late. I stared at her for a long moment, my heart a mixture of numbness and fury. I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to rewind time and erase everything that had happened. But none of that was possible. This was my reality now. She had made her choice, and there was no going back. So, that's it? I asked bitterly. You're just gone. She nodded, her lips trembling. I'm sorry, Matt. I really am. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a screech. No, Lisa. You're not sorry. Not yet. But you will be. And with that, I walked out of the cafe, leaving her sitting there, a broken shell of the woman I had once loved. The woman who had torn my life apart. I left the cafe without looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. The cold evening air hit me as I stepped outside, but it did nothing to numb the burning anger inside. Lisa's words replayed in my mind over and over, her excuses, her half-hearted apologies. She wasn't coming back. And despite everything, despite the betrayal, the lies, the humiliation, part of me still struggled to accept it. As I drove back home, the streetlights passing in a blur, I realized the full weight of what she had done. This wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. Lisa had chosen to leave. She had chosen to abandon our family for some fleeting thrill, some selfish desire to feel alive. I wasn't even sure who she was anymore. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a stranger who could justify tearing apart everything we had built together. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same as it always had, warm lights glowing from the windows, the faint outline of the girls' toys scattered across the yard. But everything inside felt different now, hollow, like a shell of the life we once had. I walked inside and found the girls already asleep. My mother had been helping out with them ever since the incident on the road. She had questions, of course, but I had brushed her off for now. I wasn't ready to explain. Not yet. I stood at the doorway to their room, watching them sleep peacefully, unaware of the storm that had swept through their lives. Emily was clutching her favorite stuffed animal, and Ava had kicked off her blanket, as usual. They were my world now. I had to hold it together for them. I quietly closed the door and sat on the couch in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen. I felt empty. There was no rage left, no sadness, just a deep, crushing exhaustion. How was I supposed to do this alone? How was I going to explain to them that their mother had left us for good? The thought of telling them the truth broke something inside me. How do you tell your children that their mother chose someone else over them? Over us? I wasn't sure I had the strength for that conversation. But sooner or later, they would ask. And when that time came, I'd have to be ready. The next few days were a blur of routines, school drop-offs, work, dinners. I tried to keep everything as normal as possible for the girls. But every moment was a reminder of the gaping hole Lisa had left behind. Then one afternoon, as I was picking the girls up from school, Emily tugged on my sleeve, her face full of questions she hadn't dared to ask until now. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" I froze, feeling the weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had known this was coming, but I wasn't ready. How could I ever be ready? I knelt down to her level, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emily, sweetheart. Mommy's not coming back home. She's staying away for a while." Her brow furrowed, confusion written all over her face. But why? Did she do something bad? I hesitated, searching for the right words, but how could I explain something so complicated to an 8-year-old? "No, Emily. It's not because of you or Ava. Mommy she needed to be somewhere else right now." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked down at the ground, her small shoulders slumping. "I miss her," she whispered. My heart shattered all over again. I reached out and pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. "I know, sweetheart. I miss her too." And I did. As angry as I was, as much as I despised what Lisa had done, there was still a part of me that missed her, the person she used to be, the family we used to have. Ava, who had been listening quietly, looked up at me with her big brown eyes. "Daddy, is Mommy mad at us?" I could barely keep it together. "No, Ava. Mommy's not mad at you. She loves you both very much. This isn't your fault, okay?" They nodded, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. No matter what I said, nothing would make this better. Nothing could fill the void that Lisa had left behind. That night, after putting the girls to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the piles of paperwork in front of me. Bills, legal documents, and divorce papers. I hadn't wanted to think about it, but it was inevitable. Lisa wasn't coming back, and even if she did, there was nothing left between us worth saving. The love we once had was gone, replaced by betrayal and anger. I reached for the pen, my hand trembling slightly as I signed my name on the dotted line. I wasn't just ending a marriage, I was ending a part of my life that I had thought would last forever. It felt like I was closing the door on something I wasn't ready to let go of. But what choice did I have? In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on everything. The marriage, the betrayal, the way it had all fallen apart so suddenly. I had spent so long blaming Lisa, hating her for what she had done, that I hadn't stopped to think about what I could learn from it all. Life doesn't always turn out the way you plan. People change, and sometimes, those changes ripped them away from you in ways you could never imagine. But as painful as it was, I realized something important. I couldn't control what Lisa had done. I couldn't change her choices. But I could control what happened next. I had two beautiful daughters who needed me, and I wasn't going to let Lisa's betrayal define their lives, or mine. We would move forward, one day at a time. And while I couldn't erase the pain, I could rebuild from the ashes. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Not better, not healed, but determined. I had been broken, but I wasn't destroyed. Life would go on, and so would I. For Emily, for Ava, and for myself. The following weeks passed in a strange blur of routine and emotion. Each day felt like a battle, holding it together for the girls while quietly dealing with the broken pieces of my own heart. Life, however, doesn't slow down when you're broken. Work demanded attention, the house needed upkeep, and Emily and Ava's lives continued on with school, friends, and their endless energy. I was sitting at the breakfast table one morning, sipping coffee, lost in thought when Emily broke the silence. "Daddy, are you happy?" Her question blindsided me. Happy? I hadn't even considered what that word meant for a while now. Happiness had been swallowed by survival, just getting through each day without letting the sadness consume me. "I don't know, Emily," I answered truthfully, putting my mug down. "But I'm working on it." She tilted her head, looking wise beyond her years. "You don't have to pretend, you know. It's okay if you're sad sometimes." Hearing those words from my 8-year-old daughter hit me hard. I realized how much she was absorbing, how much she was watching and understanding even without fully knowing the details of what had happened. She wasn't a little kid anymore. She felt the absence of her mother, the tension in the air, the weight of the changes. "I am sad sometimes," I admitted, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. "But I'm also okay. And I'll always be okay as long as I have you and Ava." Her small smile gave me strength. She leaned in to hug me tightly, and I held her close. For a moment, everything felt a little lighter. That evening, after the girls had gone to bed, I found myself standing in front of Lisa's closet. Most of her things were still there, untouched since she had left. I had avoided this space, hoping that by not confronting it, I could pretend things weren't as bad as they were. But the divorce papers had been signed. There was no more pretending. With a deep breath, I opened the closet door. Her clothes hung neatly, untouched, as if she might walk in any minute and grab something for work. But that wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. Each piece of fabric felt like a piece of her lingering in the house, a ghost that haunted every corner of my mind. I pulled down a box from the top shelf. Inside were mementos of our life together, photos, postcards from vacations we'd taken, little trinkets that once meant everything to us. Now, they felt like relics from a time that didn't belong to me anymore. I sifted through the memories, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and bitterness. How could something that seemed so solid crumble so easily? One photo caught my eye. It was of us at the beach, arms wrapped around each other, the girls laughing in the background as they played in the sand. We had looked so happy, so complete. It felt like looking at strangers now. A different version of me and Lisa, people who no longer existed. I put the photo down and closed the box. I couldn't dwell on the past any longer. It was time to let go. The next day, I made the decision to start clearing out Lisa's things. It wasn't out of anger, it was out of necessity. I couldn't keep living in a house full of reminders of what used to be. If I was going to move forward, I needed to create a space that felt like mine, like the girls. Our home. I packed her clothes into boxes, folded neatly but with a finality that felt strange. As I worked, I kept expecting to feel more sadness, more rage, but instead, there was a sense of calm. This was the first step in reclaiming my life. When I had finished, I looked around the room. It felt different, emptier, yes, but also lighter, like a weight had been lifted. I wasn't erasing Lisa from my life, but I was making room for something new. Something that was just for me and the girls. A few days later, I got a message from Lisa. Just a simple text, "I want to see the girls." I stared at the screen, feeling the old anger flare up again. The nerve she had, to just waltz back in whenever it suited her, after all she'd put us through. But the girls deserved a relationship with their mother, no matter how much I despised what she had done. After a long pause, I typed back, "Fine. This weekend." The next few days were a mess of emotions. I dreaded seeing her again, dreaded having to face her and deal with whatever fake smile she would bring. But I couldn't let my own feelings get in the way of what was best for the girls. When the weekend came, Lisa showed up at the door. The moment I opened it, I felt a knot form in my stomach. She looked different, almost like the Lisa I once knew, but colder, more distant. Her eyes searched mine for a moment, but I gave her nothing. The girls ran to her, hugging her tightly, their innocent joy filling the room. I stood back, watching them, feeling a strange sense of detachment. This was the woman who had wrecked our lives, but to them, she was still mommy. And that was a truth I couldn't change, no matter how much I wanted to. "Hi, Matt," she said, her voice cautious. "Thanks for letting me come." I nodded, keeping it short. "It's for the girls." She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "I know." The rest of the visit was uneventful. Lisa played with the girls, laughing and smiling, while I stayed in the background, observing. It was strange, seeing her so close yet feeling so far removed from her. The love I had once felt for her was buried under layers of hurt, and I wasn't sure it would ever resurface. When it was time for her to leave, the girls clung to her, asking when they would see her again. Lisa promised she'd come back soon, giving me a quick glance before heading out the door. As soon as she was gone, the tension in the house lifted. I tucked the girls into bed that night, listening to their stories about their day with mommy. They didn't see the cracks in our family yet. Maybe that was a good thing. Maybe I could shield them from it just a little longer. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I realized that this was my life now. There would be no happy reunion, no mending of what was broken. Lisa and I were done. But I wasn't done living. I had Emily and Ava, and I had myself. And that was enough. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't over it, not by a long shot. But I was moving forward, one step at a time. And in the end, that was all I could do. The weeks that followed Lisa's visit were calmer than I expected. The initial shock had worn off, leaving behind a quieter but still persistent ache. Life had settled into a new routine, one that felt more like mine, like ours, me and the girls. I had stopped waiting for Lisa to show up or call unexpectedly. She had faded into the background, a part of the past, only stepping in for brief visits with the kids. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, I sat down in the living room with a glass of whiskey, letting the quiet of the house seep into my bones. I had been thinking a lot about the future, what it would look like now that everything had changed. Divorce was final. Lisa was gone, but I was still here, and the weight of starting over lingered. I picked up my phone and scrolled through contacts, stopping at a name I hadn't dialed in a long time, James. My best friend since college. He'd been calling and texting, trying to be there for me through all of this, but I had shut him out. I didn't know how to explain everything, didn't want to relive it. But tonight, for some reason, I felt like I needed to reach out. Before I could second-guess it, I hit call. "Matt?" James' voice answered after a few rings, a mix of surprise and relief in his tone. "Man, it's good to hear from you." "Hey, James," I said, my voice rough from disuse. "Sorry I've been distant." "It's all good," he replied, understanding. I figured you'd call when you were ready. How are you holding up? I let out a long sigh, staring at the ceiling. It's been rough. But I'm getting through it. Look, I know you probably don't want to talk about it all, but I've been worried about you. You don't have to do this alone, you know. Let me be there for you, man. His words hit me in a way I didn't expect. I hadn't let anyone in, not James, not my family. I had been trying to carry the weight of everything by myself. But maybe it was time to let someone help. Yeah, I muttered, feeling a lump in my throat. I appreciate that. I do. I've just been trying to keep it together for the girls, you know? It's harder than I thought. I can't imagine, man, James said, his voice softening. But you're strong. I know you'll get through this. We talked for another hour, about everything and nothing, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a little lighter. I realized then how much I had missed having someone to talk to, someone who knew me before all of this. James didn't push me to talk about Lisa or the divorce. He just listened, and that was enough. A few days later, the girls and I decided to take a spontaneous trip to the local park. The fall weather was perfect, crisp air, golden leaves, and the kind of sun that warmed without overwhelming. Emily and Ava ran ahead of me, giggling as they raced toward the playground. Their laughter filled the space around me, a reminder that life still had joy in it, even if it was different now. I watched them climb the jungle gym, my heart swelling with pride. They had been so strong through all of this, stronger than I had expected. Kids are resilient in ways adults often forget. They had their moments of asking for mommy, of wondering when she'd come back, but they were adapting. They were learning to live in this new normal, just like I was. As I sat on a bench, sipping from a thermos of coffee, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. It was a text from Lisa. Can we talk? My jaw clenched involuntarily. I stared at the message for a long moment, considering whether to respond. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to hear more excuses, more justifications for why she had torn our family apart. But something in me knew this wasn't going away. No matter how much I wanted to forget about her, Lisa would always be tied to my life because of the girls. About what? I typed back, keeping it short. Her reply came almost immediately, about the girls. About us. Us. The word hung in the air like a bitter aftertaste. There was no us anymore. Not in the way she meant, anyway. There is no us, I responded flatly. If it's about the girls, we can talk. Otherwise, there's nothing left to say. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, trying to shake off the frustration building in my chest. I didn't want to be angry anymore. I wanted to move on, to find peace. But Lisa had a way of reopening old wounds, and I wasn't sure how to protect myself from it. I watched Emily and Ava swing higher and higher, their carefree laughter filling the air, and I reminded myself that this was what mattered now. Not Lisa. Not the past. But these moments with my daughters, the future I was building for them. Later that evening, after the girls were in bed, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Lisa. I want to apologize. I stared at the message for a long time, my mind racing with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to just delete it, to shut her out and keep moving forward without looking back. But another part of me, a smaller, quieter part, was curious. What could she possibly say now that would change anything? I took a deep breath and typed back, fine. Talk. A minute later, my phone rang. I hesitated for a second, then answered. Matt, Lisa's voice came through, softer than I remembered. I'm sorry. I didn't respond immediately. I waited, letting the silence stretch. I know I hurt you, she continued, her voice breaking slightly. I know I hurt the girls, and I can't undo that. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I just... I didn't handle things the way I should have. I was selfish, and I didn't think about how much damage I was causing. I leaned back in my chair, the familiar ache rising in my chest. Yeah, you didn't, I said quietly. You destroyed everything, Lisa. I know, she whispered. And I'll live with that guilt for the rest of my life. But I want to do better now, for the girls. I want to be there for them, and I want to figure out how we can co-parent in a way that's best for them. I sighed, rubbing my temples. This was what I had wanted to hear, but it didn't take away the pain. It didn't change the fact that she had already broken us. We'll figure it out, I said, my voice flat. But don't expect anything more from me. We're not fixing this, Lisa. We're done. I understand, she said, a long pause following. I'm sorry, Matt. The call ended, and I sat there in the quiet for a long time, feeling a mix of anger, relief, and sadness. Her apology didn't fix anything, but it was something. Maybe it was the first step toward a new kind of peace, one where we could both move forward without the weight of the past hanging over us. And that night, for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. The days after Lisa's apology were different. Not easier, but different. I no longer felt the constant, gnawing weight of unresolved anger pulling at me. There was still pain, sure, but it was like a bruise rather than a gaping wound. The calls and texts with Lisa had become more focused on the girls and less about the past. It was businesslike, and that's how I wanted it. No more digging through old wounds, no more trying to find meaning in a situation that was meaningless. One Saturday afternoon, I took the girls to the local ice cream parlor. It had become a bit of a tradition after everything fell apart. Emily and Ava were running ahead of me, giggling and jostling each other to get to the door first, their energy infectious. They'd been my anchor through all of this. No matter how bad things got, no matter how empty I felt, they reminded me there was still joy to be found, still life to be lived. As we sat down with our ice cream, Ava, her mouth covered in chocolate, looked up at me. Daddy, why don't we see Mommy more? She said she'd come last week, but she didn't. That familiar knot formed in my stomach. I took a breath, trying to find the words. She's trying, sweetie. Sometimes things come up, and she can't make it, but she loves you both very much. It was the same lie I told myself whenever Lisa canceled a visit or sent another vague excuse. But I wasn't ready to tear that illusion away from the girls. They needed something to hold on to. Emily, ever the more observant one, stayed quiet. She didn't ask as many questions as Ava did, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She wasn't naive. She knew more than I gave her credit for. As we finished our ice cream and headed to the park, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen and saw Lisa's name. Can we meet? There's something important I need to talk about. I hesitated. Every time she reached out, it stirred something in me, a mix of frustration, anger, and, to my surprise, a hint of curiosity. What could she possibly have left to say? Still, for the girl's sake, I needed to keep the lines of communication open. Fine. Tomorrow afternoon. The next day, I met Lisa at the same cafe where we had confronted each other weeks ago. As I sat across from her, I realized something had changed. She looked different. Not the cold, detached version of her I had seen before. There was something softer about her now, a fragility I hadn't noticed in a long time. Thanks for meeting me, she said, her voice quieter than usual. I didn't know how else to do this. I frowned, unsure of what she was getting at. What's this about, Lisa? You said it was important. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she held her coffee cup. I know I've messed up. I know I can't fix what I've broken, and I don't expect you to forgive me for that. But I need to tell you the truth about something I've been hiding, something I wasn't honest about during our marriage. I leaned back in my chair, feeling my pulse quicken. After everything that had come out, the affair, the lies, what more could there possibly be? Matt, I wasn't just unhappy with us. I was unhappy with myself. I've been seeing someone professional, a therapist. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did. And, she hesitated, her eyes welling up. I realized something. I'm not coming back because I don't want to. Not just because of the affair, but because I'm not the person I thought I was. I'm not the person you thought I was. I stared at her, trying to piece together what she was saying. What do you mean? You're not the person I thought you were? She bit her lip, tears now spilling freely down her cheeks. I'm leaving, Matt. Really leaving. Not just from you, but from the girls too. I've made the decision to go away for a while, maybe a long while. I need to figure out who I am without all of this. I'm not capable of being a mother right now, not like I should be. I need to find myself, and I can't do that if I'm here, pretending. I sat there, frozen. Her words hit me like a freight train. She wasn't just talking about leaving me, she was talking about abandoning the girls. Abandoning her role as their mother. I couldn't comprehend it. How could someone just walk away like that? You're leaving the girls. I whispered, the shock making my voice unsteady. You're just going to abandon them? Her face crumpled, and she covered it with her hands. I know how awful this sounds. I know. But I can't be what they need. Not right now. Maybe not ever. For a moment, the world stopped. The air in the cafe felt thick, suffocating. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lisa, who had always seemed like such a devoted mother, was saying she couldn't handle it anymore. That she wasn't capable of being there for the two little girls who adored her. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor loudly, causing a few people to glance over. But I didn't care. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said, my voice hard. But I'll tell you this, I don't care what your reasons are. You don't get to just walk away from your children. You don't get to make that choice. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. Matt, I'm broken. I can't do this. I shook my head, disbelief turning to anger. No. You're weak. And you're selfish. Without waiting for her to respond, I turned and walked out, the weight of her confession crashing down on me. Lisa had betrayed me in more ways than I could count, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. She was willing to leave our daughters behind, not just me. Later that night, as I sat in the quiet of the house, I realized something. For all the pain Lisa had caused, for all the betrayal and heartbreak, her leaving was no longer the worst part. The worst part was that I had clung to the idea of who she used to be, who I thought she was. Now, I knew the truth. The woman I had loved was gone, maybe never really there. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't weak. I still had the most important thing, my daughters. They needed me, and I would be there for them. I wasn't just surviving this anymore. I was moving forward, rebuilding my life without her. That night, as I kissed Emily and Ava goodnight, I made a promise to myself, I would raise them with all the love they deserved. I would never let them feel abandoned. Lisa may have walked away, but I was still here. And I always would be. This was the turning point. Not the end, but a new beginning. A life without Lisa, yes, but a life filled with love, resilience, and a future I could build with my daughters. We would be okay. I would be okay. I closed the door to their room, the sound of their soft breathing filling the hallway. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace.